Okay, the first thing that's immediately obvious to me driving this car is that it really does lack any power at all. I know that it's a small car and you'd expect it to have a small engine, but I think it'd be fair to say this car could be a lot nippier. It is an automatic gearbox, which there's nothing wrong with the gearbox at all. It's quite a smooth transition for a small engine, which is normally the other way around. But if I was to give you an example, I'm driving at 50 miles an hour now, and if I choose to accelerate, it's just not going anywhere at all. Now it's pretty much like that when you're at lower speeds as well. So pulling away from roundabouts and overtaking and stuff in this vehicle is not going to be its strong point. Now if I give the steering a little bit of a wiggle like this, it's immediately obvious that the car's got a lot of roll and a lot of play, and for a very short wheelbase car, the steering is not quite as responsive as I would like to have seen. There's actually quite a bit of play in this steering wheel. Now, considering the vehicle's done less than 80,000 miles, it's unlikely that it's going to be a mechanical issue like warm bushes. So I wouldn't feel confident to do an emergency swerve in this vehicle by any means. It is a small car, but you do have a lot of headroom. It's not a claustrophobic small car, so I've got to give them credit where it's due there. The upholstery reminds me of office furniture. It's very bleak, bland, and it's not nice at all. I'm just going to do a brake test now, not an emergency stop, but just a firm stop. Well, the brakes aren't that bad actually. They're very smooth, and you can apply a gradual pressure, which is interesting because normally with small cars the brakes can be very grippy, grabby, especially with small hatchbacks, but they were excellent brakes, and I felt that the car was very balanced when it was stopping, like all calipers work in perfect synchronization. Now the instrument cluster is pretty clear. I mean, it's not obstructed by the steering wheel, but I've just noticed that the rev counter and the speedometer are very, very similar. In fact, for somebody who's not familiar with the car, it would be very easy to mistake one for the other. And the only other car I can think of that's a bit like that is the Golf. The speedo's actually on the left and the rev's on the right, and it'd be very easy to mistake that for the speedo, so I'd be aware of that when you take one out. The centre console's nicely laid out, and everything's separated into component form, so it is pretty simple to operate without taking your eyes off the road. And thankfully they've got the dials for the temperature control, as so many cars now have buttons, which is not convenient, and it does make it more difficult to control while you're driving down. The idea here is you want to get this business that you're fiddling around with down here over and done with, and not take your eyes off the road. Now the rear view vision is perfect. It's not obstructed in any way at all. And I'm just going to do a 0 to 60 test now. 3, 2, 1, go. The side mirrors, however, are very low. They're too low, and you've got to bend your neck down to look at them, which is not good. And that's 60. So the car does struggle. It wouldn't hurt to have put a 1600 injection engine in this, so it's a bit disappointing. But to be fair, the actual ride is actually quite comfortable. I mean, it doesn't zip along, but it is quite a smooth ride. You can tell this car's been made by a quality manufacturer. And as I was saying, there is that nagging little roll going on. I know when these cars first came into production there was a bit of an issue with them capsizing, and I wonder whether that was ever really handled, because I think if you were going to do a swerve in this car, the speed I'm doing now, 40 miles an hour, I think you can expect to pretty much end up on the roof. So going back to the side mirrors are way too far down here. They need to be right up here, and a bit of an issue with the speed dial. Steering's a little bit vague. I mean, if you jump in a Mini, you turn the steering wheel a millimetre and the wheels are responding straight away. With this one, I mean, there's nothing happening there at all. It's not what you'd expect from a small car. Now, the gearbox, I must admit, I hate automatic gearboxes in small engine cars, but with this one, it's very, very good. It's obviously a tidy little package and it's been well developed. The rear seats are surprisingly accommodating. I think somebody with a height of about 6'2" to 6'4" would have no problems in this car at all. Plenty of headroom rather, plenty of leg room. The front footwell is a little bit claustrophobic. Now I've been in the car for a while, I do feel a little bit enclosed, I must admit. It's a difficult car to review this because when I think about its competitors, there's not really anything really quite like this. I mean, it's quite unique in its own way. There are similar cars, but they tend to be bigger, and the small car market is a tricky one to review. So I would urge anybody thinking about buying a car this size to ask themselves why they really want a car this size. I mean, is it in your best interest to have a car that is really, at the end of the day, minute? But this one does nip round the corners quite nicely. Just went through a roundabout there, no problem. Anybody thinking about buying one of these has already made their mind up about buying one. So I would just urge you, when you take it for a test drive, to pay particular attention to the steering mechanism, because it seems to me that these cars might be a bit vulnerable to wear there, or it may be just a poor steering. But generally speaking, if you can get over the claustrophobia side of this vehicle, it's actually quite a pleasant car to drive. And I would urge anyone thinking about buying one to take one for a test drive, because I think you might be pleasantly surprised. They're certainly well put together, and you know, they do what they're supposed to do, really.